tomorrow we'll do the review for Unit 3, and we'll see how it goes. There's like 30 questions, so that might be all we get to. We'll see about language arts tomorrow. But for now, we're working with lesson 17, effectiveness of arguments. And today's lesson, we will be able to analyze an argument, note an author's supporting evidence, determine if evidence is reliable and convincing. And this is all building towards writing, a lot of it. It's all important skills as far as what you're going to see on your GED test. Multiple tests, right? You cover some of this in science. We do it in language arts. We do it here in social studies. And then when it comes to writing, this is really important for those writing responses you're going to have to do. And we built towards analyzing evidence and sources and all that material. So now we're kind of at the end here and looking more towards the argument and how that evidence supports it, and whether or not it supports it, and basically picking and choosing which argument, if we're posed with maybe two, we believe is the better argument. And let's listen to our audio.
When learning about social studies, you may need to identify strong and weak arguments. A strong argument is persuasive and is backed by accurate sources. On the other hand, a weak argument lacks the factual support needed to make it convincing. In order to analyze the effectiveness of an argument, notice any supporting evidence that the author or speaker provides, and consider whether it is reliable and convincing. As with other areas of the GED test, questions about learning how to analyze the effectiveness of arguments will test your ability to interpret information at various depth of knowledge levels through the use of complex reading skills and thinking skills.
Yeah, and that's really important, identifying strong and weak arguments in analyzing the evidence that they use. And it's not just about what we talked about yesterday with is it relevant. They might have a good fact that they that they put into their argument, but is it relevant to what they're actually talking about? Sometimes they kind of throw you a curveball, and it's not necessarily directly related to what they're talking about. So you have to be careful when you look at that. And then those other ideas that we talked about, appeals to emotion. Is it just an appeal to emotion that they're using rather than offering evidence to support it? And those types of ideas to help you, search through everything and cancel out the noise and all the other irrelevant stuff to actually look at their argument and look at the evidence that they're using. And so, and we're going to have a little writing exercise here in the quiz as well. So we'll get a look at that too. And Bill Clinton's Democratic National Convention speech from 2012. So we'll take a look here. Remember, thinking about the title. Okay, Bill Clinton speaking at the Democratic National Convention. So we know that him as a Democrat and a former president, that we have to take into account. So when we look at what he says here, what argument he makes and what details he provides, what evidence he provides, does that all line up? So here he says he, referring to President Barack Obama, has laid the foundation for a new, modern, successful economy of shared prosperity. Folks, whether the American people believe what I just said or not, may be the whole election. I just want to know what I believe. I just want you to know that I believe it. With all my heart, I believe it. Now, why do I believe it? I'm fixing to tell you why. I believe it because President Obama's approach embodies the values, the ideas, and the direction America has to take to build the 21st century version of the American dream. A nation of shared opportunities, shared responsibilities, shared prosperity, a shared sense of community. So let's get back to the story. In 2010, as the president's recovery program kicked in, the job losses stopped and things began to turn around. The Recovery Act saved or created millions of jobs and cut taxes. Let me say this again: cut taxes for 95% of the American people, and in the last 29 months, our economy has produced about 4.5 million private sector jobs. We could have done better, but last year the Republicans blocked the president's job plan, costing the economy more than 1 million new jobs. So it points out here we have several sections that are underlined, referring to text box A. So it says folks at the beginning. Now, why do I believe it? And then, so let's get back to the story. And it says, to be effective, a spoken argument often has features that a written argument does not. Here, Mr. Clinton uses language that is more casual and conversational than he would if the speech were written. So we have to take that into account for the things that we are reading. We talked about, who's the audience, what's the purpose, when it was written, evaluating the source, right? Where did this appear? In this case, this is all spoken. So we take into account, when he uses words like folks, that's something that you would do to address an audience. The way he asks questions, why do I believe this? That's something that's going to appear more in speech. You do encounter that in a written article, something that was just meant to be in print, not actually a speech. But the tone that he's taking and everything, you take that into account, that it was a speech that was given and not just something that was written on paper. And then it says on the second box, while conversational language and humor engage the audience, the speaker's arguments still rely on facts and other supporting evidence. So it's not, he does have evidence here, right? He talks about the Recovery Act from 2010 and, statistics, it cut taxes, it created jobs, so forth and so on. So that is, he is providing proof of, why he believes that President Obama is fixing the economy. That's largely the argument he's making here, right? So we've identified the argument that he is, supporting, obviously, President Obama, that he believes he is fixing the economy. That's the main argument, and here's why. And there's some evidence there. So everything is laid out there. All right, so let's switch over to the quiz. Another short quiz. We got one multiple choice, and then we're going to have some writing here. Okay, and our test taking tips. So when analyzing an argument's effectiveness, first summarize the argument. So that's what we just did, right? Why is Bill Clinton speaking? When we're talking about, things like a Democratic National Convention, we're talking about campaign speeches, we can already, start narrowing things down. Well, this is probably a persuasive speech. They're probably wanting us to vote for, re-elect Barack Obama. So, and then, what's the audience? Well, he's speaking at the Democratic National Convention. So it's largely, Democrats, and, some journalists and things like that. So, yeah, we analyze an argument's effectiveness, we summarize the argument, we try to narrow it down, and then determine whether the supporting details are facts or only anecdotes or opinions. So, anecdotes, if it's a personal account, if it's a story about, if Clinton here had only talked about one family that had improve their situation during the first 4 years of the Obama administration, that's anecdotal, right? It's like, well, I know the Johnson family did really well because of Obama's policies. We need to speak for the entire country, right? We need more evidence than that. And then, of course, otherwise, if it's just opinion, if he doesn't offer any evidence, if he just says, I'm voting for Barack Obama because I like it, something very vague and broad like that, we need more evidence. And he does give that. Okay, now let's go to question 1 here. Etta, you want to read question 1 for us?
Yeah, I had to get to my unmute button.
Okay.
Okay, so we have, which of the following would strengthen Clinton's argument for Obama's presidential campaign? A, add more details about how President Obama's program has increased jobs. B, give more personal anecdotes about his personal relationship with President Obama. C, talk more about the success of the Clinton administration and tie that to President Obama's administration. Or D, ridicule President Obama's opponent in his campaign. A.
Yeah, A. Yeah, add more details, right? So if we're talking about, increasing jobs, okay, that's great. Maybe he could add, did the average wage go up at that time? Or what sector did these jobs come from? Were they skilled jobs? Things like that. Did we see more people moving away from needing benefits, right? Were they able to, were they full-time jobs? That's another big one. Were they full-time versus part-time? So there's, other evidence that he may have been able to use to support it. If that's not there, then you of course avoid it. You want to point out, I was like, yeah, we added, 1 million part-time minimum wage jobs. You wouldn't necessarily want to point that out, right? You want to make sure that they're, fully employed or making a good wage. But if that was there, he could use some more statistics like that to help support the argument he's making that Obama has improved the economy and got people back to work. All right, so 1 was A. And so this is really a good example of what you might encounter on the test, especially with language arts, because you're going to get a passage A and a passage B, and those two authors of those passages are going to offer an argument, whether it's just whatever topic it might be. And here, so I'll read through them, and we'll write up which one we like. So the question here, what it's asking us to do: Senator Fulbright supports the resolution. We'll get to what that is, while Senator Gruning does not. In your response, develop an argument about how each senator's argument for or against the president's policy is effective. Incorporate relevant and specific evidence from the text and your own knowledge of the enduring issue and the circumstances surrounding the topic. So we'll, which one is better? We'll get to that here. So it's ask us, read the excerpt and the question, and then write your answer in the space below. And then we've done this several times already. So some background information here to help understand what this is about. The Tonkin Gulf resolution of 1964. Prior to that, this was in August. In May, it was somewhere over the summer. There was what was called the Tonkin Gulf incident. And of course, in 1964, we were not actively fighting in Vietnam. We had a lot of military there that was advising South Vietnam. During some type of operation at sea, there's a Navy ship, I can't remember which naval ship it was attacked by North Vietnamese Navy. And there was some confirmation, and then there was another incident where maybe there was a torpedo fired at a U.S. Navy ship. There's lot of suspicion whether or not both accounts are valid. But this was deemed an act of aggression by North Vietnam. So it was pulling us into the war. Basically, it was one of the very significant events that led us to actually active fighting in Vietnam. And so Congress, the legislative body, passed this resolution. It's called the Tonkin Gulf Resolution, 1964, and it basically authorized President Johnson, Lyndon Johnson, to retaliate and use military force in Vietnam. So we'll see here between the two arguments, why this may be necessary and why it might be an issue. And just a reminder, after World War II, we never declared war on another country. That was the last time we declared war on was in Germany and Japan. Since then, they've been conflicts where the president has conducted a lot of the wartime activity. And then this was reversed after the war in the 70s. So we'll take a look here and see what these two senators have to say about this resolution, why one supports it and one does not. So Fulbright supports it. So we'll see what he says about it. He says, as I stated, Section 1 is intended to deal primarily with aggression against our forces. I do not know what the limits are. I do not think this resolution can be determinative of that fact. I think it would indicate that he, President Johnson, would take reasonable means first to prevent any further aggression or repel further aggression against our own forces. I do not know how to answer the senator's question and give him an absolute assurance that large numbers of troops would not be put ashore. I would deplore it. And then Ernest Gruning, who opposes it, says, regrettably, I find myself in disagreement with the president's Southeast Asian policy. The serious events of the past few days, the attack by North Vietnamese vessels on American warships and our reprisal strikes me as the inevitable consequence of U.S. unilateral military aggressive policy in Southeast Asia. We now are about to authorize the president to move our armed forces, not only in South Vietnam, but also into North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and of course, the authorization includes all the rest of the SEATO nations. That was a pact of Southeast Asian countries aligned with the US. This resolution is a further authorization for escalation unlimited. I am opposed to sacrificing a single American boy in this venture. We have lost far too many already. And what we know is that it did lead to a large-scale escalation of 500,000 troops in Vietnam, and 50, I think it's over 50,000 deaths of U.S. Service members. So there's the two sides. Fulbright does not offer much evidence, right? We see he says that I think it would indicate that President Johnson would take reasonable means first to prevent any further aggression or repel further aggression against our own forces. I do not know how to answer the senator's question. I give him an absolute assurance that large number of troops would not be put ashore. So he would not like to see that, but he can't offer any evidence that that's not going to happen. So that's part of the problem there in his argument. How could we avoid it? Gruning offers a few relevant events. So he's talking about the escalation. He's talking about the attack by North Vietnamese vessels. He mentions the reprisals. We struck at that point. We retaliated, and then consequences when it says unilateral military aggressive policy. So unilateral means acting on your own. a unilateral decision or unilateral action by the United States mean we did not necessarily confer with our allies. We did not really look at international opinion or public opinion. We just went and did something. So those can pose a problem. And now it's talking about authorizing the president to move armed forces. So it says, not only in South Vietnam, but all over Southeast Asia and into North Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Thailand, and further authorization for escalation unlimited. So it doesn't indicate that there is any limit to what President Johnson can do. Senator Fulbright pretty much admits that he doesn't think these things will happen. And Senator Gruening is also pointing out, but he might think it's not going to happen, but we also don't have any limits to his power at this point. So, and he points out, he doesn't want this to escalate because he doesn't want to lose American lives. So thinking about those two arguments here and putting together, how each argument for the policy is effective, and then we will look at whose might be more effective. So there's not a lot of evidence in either, but I think Gruening does make a better argument. So let me start putting something together here. So we'll start with this. Neither senator, let's see if I struggle today with the old typing, supports his argument with much evidence. Nevertheless, so remember we talked about transition words. Yes, I will put it in the chat there for everybody. So don't worry about if you want to type along, that's fine, but I will copy and paste it, put it in the chat. So nevertheless, remember our transition words there that add contrast. So I'm switching gears and I want to offer something new here. Senator Gruening, is that right? Gruening, yeah. Does state recent activities in Southeast Asia. Let's say disturbing activities, right? These are disturbing activities. Disturbing activities in Southeast Asia by U.S. armed forces and North
aggression.
Vietnam.
Aggression.
Senator Gruening is concerned that the resolution would allow the president to expand military activities leading to war. Now, it doesn't say that necessarily. Say to expand military activities and risk the lives of American soldiers. And then we'll follow up with Senator Fulbright. So Senator Fulbright on the other hand again, making that sort of transition. Bases his support on his belief that the president will use only what is reasonable, but does not offer any evidence support that claim. Okay. So basically, we make sure that we discuss both passages. We show that Senator Gruening offers more evidence, makes a better case. Senator Fulbright, though, bases his support basically on feeling and belief, not on evidence. Okay, let me go ahead and copy that. Copy. And we will paste that. And I just want to point out, there's going to be opportunities. I know I'm writing here. I want to give you guys good examples. There's going to be opportunities for you guys to write as we go through the rest of the lessons. There's going to be several in language arts. And what I did for the last set of classes, and by the way, just it's in the chat now, so you guys can copy and paste, was to put a prompt on Google Classroom and let y'all take some time on your own to put together a response. You could send it to me when we get closer to the time to test everything. We'll do this maybe as much as you want, and just submit it to me in email, and I take a look at it, do some editing, make some comments on it, and tell you what as far as what's good, what you might need work on, and things like that. Okay, so is everybody caught up here, able to get the answer down? All right, well, I'm going to go ahead and submit here. And that's pretty straightforward. We had one multiple choice, that was A. And then our writing response. Okay. And it also gives us, the sort of a grading rubric, and it tells you, creation of arguments, how you're going to get those points there. So we just want to make sure that we point out the evidence that's available. Yeah, basically, what it says here. So, and we want to make sure that we don't. You're going to have like 25 minutes or so. You don't want to get too, you want to make sure that you cover everything. You don't want to get caught up in getting too verbose. You don't want to overstate things. You don't have to, being direct and succinct is going to help you move forward and not get caught on time when you do a writing response like that. Right. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get over to the workbook here. Okay. And again, it says an effective argument is one that can win the acceptance of its audience. An author or speaker can persuade an audience to accept his or her argument by presenting a strong argument supported by facts or evidence. A weak argument is not supported by facts. It's going to use other tactics, right? Like we talked about, it might appeal to emotion. It might have like a celebrity that says, again, during election time, we have a lot of celebrities that come out and endorse different candidates. They know nothing. I mean, there's some people that we admire and we might like their movies and everything. I mean, some of them are, I'm not saying they're not bright or they actually study the situations, but their opinion is no more valid than anybody else's. It's simply that they reach a large audience, and political candidates and stuff will reach out to them to support their campaign or work for them or get their message out. So, but they are no more effective than anybody else on the street. And that says, as you analyze the effectiveness of an argument, pay close attention to the types of evidence that the author or speaker offers. Does this person use facts and statistics or only anecdotal evidence? Assessing the reliability of this information will help you make an evaluation. So again, do they only talk about personal accounts? That's going to be anecdotal. If they pick, one particular situation, that doesn't necessarily speak for, the larger situation. Just because, it's cold here in Ohio right now, it doesn't mean that there's not global warming. All right. That's kind of anecdotal. If I go outside and I'm like, I'm cold, I guess we don't have any global warming, or climate change. That's kind of anecdotal, right? I'm not looking at evidence. I'm not looking at global temperatures and things like that. So let's start the workbook. And here, what do we have? So this is from the opinion of the court by Chief Justice Warren Burger, U.S. Supreme Court, United States versus Nixon, 1974. Let's see what this is about. Okay, so a congressional hearing, and I mentioned this earlier, right, yesterday about Watergate. So a congressional hearing about the Watergate break-in scandal during Richard M. Nixon's presidency revealed that the president had installed a tape recording device in the Oval Office. The special prosecutor in charge of the case wanted access to these taped discussions to help prove that President Nixon and his aides had abused their power and broken the law. The president's incomplete compliance was challenged and eventually taken to the U.S. Supreme Court. The following excerpt is from the court's opinion written by Chief Justice Warren Burger. So that's, Chief Justice of the Supreme Court. And this is their opinion on that situation. Could they get those tapes that Nixon recorded in the Oval Office to basically use against him to show that there was criminal activity? So it states, neither the doctrine of separation of powers nor the need for confidentiality of high-level communications without more can sustain an absolute unqualified presidential privilege of immunity from judicial process under all circumstances. The president's need for complete candor and objectivity from advisors calls for great deference from the courts. However, when the privilege depends solely on the broad, undifferentiated claim of public interest in the confidentiality of such conversations, a confrontation with other values arises. Absent a claim of need to protect military, diplomatic, or sensitive national security secrets, we find it difficult to accept the argument that even the very important interest and confidentiality of presidential communications is significantly diminished by production of such material for in-camera inspection with all the protection that a district court will be obliged to provide. So they are basically saying that there's no reason that the Nixon administration, well, this obviously is happening after, because it says it implies that this is after he had resigned. And then when Ford took over, he kind of preemptively pardoned Nixon for any wrongdoing. And so it says in the underlined bit there in passage A, or in text box A, so this passage suggests that the court requires the presence of some special circumstance in order to grant the president's immunity request made in court proceedings. And then at the bottom, it says the term in camera means in private or in chambers. So not like a photograph or a video. So in private. It describes legal proceedings that the media and the public are not permitted to attend. Such proceedings are often held in the interest of protecting national security. So this, in Nixon's case, and some presidents will state things like executive privilege, or it's a matter of national security that they can't take, turn these documents, or in this case audio, like a tape recording over, and because it's either has some type of state secrets or military or diplomatic secrets involved that the public cannot be privy to. But the Supreme Court saying, well, they haven't presented any evidence that would suggest that here, so he needs to cough up those tapes. All right. And so it says here, authors and speakers may use reasoning or logic instead of facts and statistics to support arguments. In that case, it is important to look for faulty logic and reasoning that may undermine the argument. So we talked about this, right? Types of faulty reasoning, right? Either or statements and things like that. So are they using faulty reasoning or logic when they're relying on that, when they're not using evidence? Okay, so let's take a look at our questions then. And let's see, Grace, could you read question 1 for us?
Okay. How does Chief Justice Berger support the Supreme Court's opinion? A, he provides statistical justification. B, he offers examples that show it will be correct. C, he explains the legal reasoning behind the court's decision. And D, he describes similar cases in other nations. D.
It's C, right? He basically reasons through the legal idea. And that's where, especially with things with like legal cases, Supreme Court rulings and opinions, things like that, you get into some technical, legal talk and things. But basically, he is reasoning through the law here as to why he cannot, the president's need for complete candor and objectivity from advisors calls for deference in the courts when the privilege depends solely on the broad, undifferentiated claim. So that's all sort of technical, but it is legal reasoning, basically. And it's sound, right? It's logical. He's not making any of those logical fallacies or faulty reasoning in his decision. So C for number 1. And Sasha Gay, could you read number 2?
It says the argument also would be relevant in which of these situations? A boundary dispute between two communities. B, a contested election. C, a debate about free speech. And D, a governor's refusal to turn over materials for an investigation. Is it D?
Yeah, right. Very similar. Governor's refusal to turn over materials. That's exactly what was happening here. Was Richard Nixon was not turning over materials to be evaluated for a court case. So D is in dog for 2. Let's see here. So Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was arrested in 1963 and jailed for taking part in a civil rights demonstration in Birmingham, Alabama. In response to a statement by white clergy that his actions were unwise and were provoking violence, Dr. King wrote a letter from his jail cell. So this is an excerpt from that. Let's see, Christiana, would you mind reading, how about the first 3 paragraphs for us?
Okay. Okay, a letter from, please, what's the name again?
The Birmingham, letter from a Birmingham jail.
Birmingham's jail. Okay, you deploy the demonstration taking place in Birmingham, but your statement fails to express a similar concern for the conditions that brought about the demonstration. But B,
Birmingham.
it's probably the most
Thoroughly.
Yeah, the most thoroughly segregated city in the United States. Its ugly record of police brutality is widely known. Its unjust treatment of Negroes in a course is a notorious reality. There have been more unsolved bombing of Negro homes and churches in than in any other city in the nation. On the basis of this condition, Negro leaders sought to negotiate with the city fathers, but they later consistently refused to engage in good faith negotiation. Some have asked, why didn't you give the new city administration time to act? The only answer that I can give is to
Query.
okay. The only answer I can give to this query is that the new B administration must be prompted about as much as the outgoing one before it acts. Perhaps it is. Oh, should I?
We'll go ahead. We'll pass off to how about Tracy? Could you read the next two paragraphs for us?
Okay.
Yes. The second paragraph, right?
Yes. All right. Yeah.
Some have asked.
Oh wait, I'm sorry. The next one down.
Perhaps.
Perhaps it's easy for those who have never felt the stinging dust of segregation to say, wait, but when you have seen vicious most things, your mother and father as well, and down your sister and brother as well. When you have seen hate-filled policemen curse, kick, and even kill your black brother and sister with impunity. When you see the vast majorities of your 20 million Negro brothers smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society, when you take a cross-country drive and find it necessary to sleep night after night in the uncomfortable corners of your automobile because no motel will accept you, I hope, sirs, you can understand our legitimate and unavoidable impatience. It is true that the police have exercised this discipline in handling the demonstrators. In this sense, they have conducted themselves rather non-violently in public. But for what purpose? To reserve the evil system of segregation. Over the past few years, I have consistently preached that non-violence demands that the means we use must be as pure as the end we seek. I have tried to make clear that it is wrong to use immoral means to attain moral ends. At this Eliot has said, there is no greater reason than to do the right deed for the wrong reason.
Right. You want to go ahead and read the question for us?
Yes. How does Dr. King respond the argument that the Birmingham demonstrations were unwise? A. He agrees, but the state that he has no choice. B. He cries that it could be more fair to criticize the condition that brought the protest about. C. He cited others who also had demonstrated. D. He said it's impossible to criticize just cause. B.
B. Yeah. So he's pointing out, so the white clergy had sort of admonished Martin Luther King Jr. for protesting in Alabama. Now, remember, yesterday we read about George Wallace, right? Segregation now, segregation, or segregation now, segregation in the future, segregation always. So that is the mentality of the Alabama politicians. So Dr. King here is pointing out, you're coming down on me saying it was unwise that we had these protests and that turned violent. But how about the conditions for African Americans living in Alabama at the time? And it points out, the poverty, police brutality. One that's interesting here is traveling and sleeping in your car. There was from I think the late 1930s until 1966 or so, sometime in the mid 60s, there was something called the Green Book. And it was a travel guide for African Americans, basically showing, which cities were safe for them to travel, where they could stop, and what was a friendly town or places to avoid. And this was printed. I think that was the most popular. I believe it was called the Green Book. There was others, travel guides, because it was dangerous, particularly in the South, for African Americans to travel through. And if they got stopped by police or something, it could be really tragic. So he's pointing all these things out. So that's part of his argument, right? Well, how about this? How about sleep at night in uncomfortable corners in their car, and the beatings and kickings of African Americans, and the lynchings, this terrorist activities basically that were occurring against Black folks in the South at that time. So that's his response. So 3 is B as in boy. And how about Etta? Can we get you to read question 4 for us?
Okay. Let me see. What does Dr. King use to support his position that demonstrations should occur in Birmingham? A, anecdotes about how he was personally treated. B, opinions of many people who live in Birmingham. C, facts about segregation in Birmingham. Or D, a court order allowing the demonstrations. C.
C, yeah, facts about segregation in Birmingham, right? How that has led to the treatment of African Americans in that time. So 4 is C. And then on to 5, we have our same passage here. Grace, how about reading number 5 for us? Grace there? Maybe not. How about Sasha Gay? Could you read number 5 for us?
It says, how does Dr. King argue effectively against those who state that the demonstration should have waited to give the new mayor in Birmingham a chance to respond? A, Dr. King reveals that he has already spoken to the mayor with no positive result. B, Dr. King gives his opinion based on the law that they have waited long enough. C, Dr. King states that people who are not African American have no right to make such a statement. D, Dr. King relates daily
Indignities.
in indignities that make waiting intolerable. Is it D?
D, yeah. So indignities, right? You think about the word dignified, living your life with dignity, a level of respect and pride, and they have been African Americans, indignities are activities that are going to oppose dignity for others. And so he's pointing out there's a sense of urgency here. So 5 was D, so make sure we click on that. About can we wait? We can't wait for a new mayoral administration to make changes. And thinking broader about the context. Okay, this is happening in Birmingham, so we can't wait for the election of a new mayor here. It's just starting to make changes, and thinking about the broader context of the South. Of Alabama, they install George Wallace as governor. They vote for George Wallace. This, obviously is not going to change statewide when you have a segregationist, a very proud and vocal segregationist that's put into the role of governor in Alabama. So this is something that can't wait. He's pointing out this is something that had to be done when it was done. So D is a dog for number 5. And then we have a section from the presidential debate of 2012, the second presidential debate. And let's see here. How about Christiana, could you read President Obama's part here? And we'll have somebody else read Mitt Romney.
Okay. Right. Okay, President Obama, we have gone through a tough 4 years, but 4 years ago, I told the American people and I told you I would cut taxes for middle-class families, and I did. I told you I would cut taxes for small business, and I have done. I said that I would end the war in Iran. Is it? Please, is it Iran?
Iraq or Iraq, yeah.
Yeah, okay, in Iran, and I did. I said I will focus. I will refocus attending on those who actually attack us on 9/11. 9/11. Yeah. Oh. And we have gone after
Al-Qaeda. Yeah, Al-Qaeda.
Okay, Al-Qaeda's leadership like never before, and Osama bin Laden is dead. We have created 5 million jobs, gone from 800,000 jobs a month being lost, and we are making progress. We saved an auto industry that was on the brink of collapse, but Governor Rumi's made some commitment as well, and I suspect he would keep those too. When members of the Republican Congress says, don't ask a dime from millionaires and billionaires to reduce our deficit. Okay, to reduce our deficit, so we can still invest in education and helping kids go to college. He said, me too. That is not the kind of leadership that you need.
All right. And Tracy, could you read Mitt Romney's response
Yes.
there?
Yes. Miss Romney, these past 4 years haven't been so good as the president just described. We just can't afford for more years like the last 4 years. He said that by now we'd have unemployment at 5.4%. The difference between where it is and 5.4% is 9 million Americans without work. He said he would have by now put forward a plan to reform Medicare and Social Security. He hasn't he hasn't even made a proposal on either one. The middle class is getting crushed under the policies of a president who has not understood what it takes to get the economy working again. The president has tried, but his policies haven't worked. He's great as a speaker and describing his plan and his vision, except we have a record to look at, and that record shows he just hasn't been able to cut the deficit to put in place reforms for Medicare and Social Security to reserve them, to get us the rising incomes. That's what this election is about. From the second presidential debate between President Barack Obama and Mitt Romney, October 2012. The question?
Go ahead. Yeah.
Yes. On which of the following to the two candidates agree in these arguments? A, tax rates for the wealthy are too high. B, the U.S. deficit is not as important a problem now as it was previously. The middle class family had tough time in the last 4 years. The unemployment had decreased steadily since 2008. 2008. Unemployment. D.
C. It's a general kind of statement, but they both had mentioned that, the middle class, he said had experienced difficulties in that time. On President Obama's side, though, he says that he has helped, alleviate the problems and the issues that middle class families. But Mitt Romney is saying that they're just as bad, basically. And one word there, deficit. That is the when we spend in a negative amount over a period of time, basically annually. Deficit spending means we're spending more than we're bringing in. So there's the deficit, which is a total that we look at annually. Based on this is the budget for everything in the U.S. And then if we spend or over that, or basically if we're not bringing in tax revenue over that amount we're spending, it's the deficit. And then there's the national debt, which continues to accrue. So that's a different number. We often hear those two things. Deficit is sort of annual when we spend more than we're making. And then the national debt is how much the country owes just over the long haul. And he's kind of pointing to that. Mitt Romney saying, he's using some statistics as well, right? President Obama was going to reduce unemployment to 5.4%. He's stating there that he hasn't, and the difference between getting to 5.4% and where the country was at that moment was 9 million Americans that were still unemployed. Okay, so that was 6C. So both were relating this to middle-class families. And 7, we'll go back to Etta. If you could read question 7 for us.
Okay. Question 7. What argument does President Obama make for re-electing him for a second term? A, he has kept promises he made before his first term. B, he has solved the nation's economic problems. C, he is more competent than Mr. Romney. Or D, he can work well with the Republicans in Congress. A.
Yeah, A. So he kept promises he made. And he kind of, that's, part of his argument there. Why do you want to reelect me? So I told the American people, and I told you I would cut taxes for middle-class families, and I did. I told you I'd cut taxes for small businesses, and I have. So he's showing there, the promises that he kept during his campaign. I told you I was going to do this, and that's what I did. So that is A for number 7. And number 8, we have the same passage. Grace, are you there? Can we get you to read number 8?
Okay. Which of the following does Mr. Romney use to support his argument against a second term for President Obama? A, quotations from economic experts. B, opinions of ordinary voters. C, his own experience. And D, economic statistics. D.
Yeah, he does have some statistics there related to the unemployment. That's really what he's going for there in that second paragraph, right? Pointing to where President Obama wanted to have unemployment, and stating that he hasn't reached it there, and has some numbers. So when you see actual numbers, you can pretty, if they're talking in specifics, especially like 5.4% and 9 million, those should be pretty sound statistics. You want to sometimes make sure that they're not, just making general statements and things like that, but that's a typically pretty sound evidence that they're using some good statistics there. So 8 is D as in dog. And let's see, 8 was D. And 9, let's see, let's go to Sasha Gay, if you could read 9 for us.
Which of the following statements summarizes President Obama's argument for his economic policies? A, we achieved a balanced budget. B, every American is entitled to a job. C, we're making progress by creating and saving jobs. And D, the last 4 years have been great for the U.S. manufacturing. Is it C?
Yeah, he's making an argument there that they've made progress. They're getting jobs back. They've saved it. That really comes down to when he says we've created 5 million jobs, gone from 800,000 jobs a month being lost. So they're preventing those jobs from being lost, and they're adding the new jobs there. So 9 is C as in cat. Again, same passage for number 10. So how about Christiana? We'll get back to you here for number 10.
Okay, number 10. It says, in which of the following ways would you summarize Mr. Romney's argument in his expert? A, Obama has promised a lot, but 4 years he has not delivered. B, there are many more people unemployed now than when President Obama took office. C, President Obama has not reduced the deflects the okay, President Obama has not
Deficit.
reduced the deficit, so he does not deserve a second term. D, the president has not spoken enough about Social Security and Medicare. Is it A?
It is A. Yeah. He's basically making the argument there that he hasn't delivered on all his promises. And he points out, the thing about that one statistic, he says, we haven't got to the 5.4% unemployment. Oh, right? This is by choice. This is a strategy. He doesn't say what the unemployment is, right? Now, I would have to look, I'd have to do some calculations, but, when you're thinking about 300 some million people in this country, 9 million people unemployed sounds like a lot. So he makes sure that he uses 9 million people rather than saying that might only be like 6% unemployment, right? So it sounds a lot better. He could say it's like, well, President Obama wanted to, get employment down to 5.4%, but here we are at 6%. Doesn't sound like very much of a difference. But if you say there's still 9 million Americans unemployed, that hits harder than just another statistic. So, or another percentage. So, and that is purposeful. He definitely did that on purpose. So 10 is A, but overall, that's the argument he's making, right? He's trying to say that you need to elect Mitt Romney because President Obama has not fulfilled his promises. And then on the other hand, what we had on President Obama's side was he was pointing out that the promises that he kept and what he had done to, get people back to work and help the middle class. All right, and okay, I'm going to go ahead and read this one. This one's interesting. And it's kind of crazy that was not that long ago. So this is from Dissenting Opinion by Chief Justice William Rehnquist, U.S. Supreme Court, Texas versus Johnson, June 21st, 1989. So dissenting opinion, that means this was the unpopular opinion, whatever. So when there's a Supreme Court ruling, there's the majority opinion, and they usually have, the one of the justices that was part of the majority opinion, write why that was the decision. Then you have the dissenting opinion. So unless it's a unanimous decision where you had like 9-0, if you had like, a decision that was 6-3. So those three justices would write a dissenting opinion on why they decided to go against the majority opinion. So that's what dissenting is in this case. So here there's two. We're starting off from the opinion of the courts. The first passage is the overall majority decision, right? So this was the Supreme Court ruling that we're reading first. And it starts off during the 1984 Republican National Convention in Dallas. Gregory Lee Johnson burned an American flag as a political protest and was eventually convicted under Texas law. The case reached the U.S. Supreme Court in order to determine whether Johnson's conviction violated the First Amendment. So he was convicted of burning the American flag, which is still a law, and you could get in trouble for it in certain places. Obviously, in Texas, 1984, get you thrown in jail. So that went to the Supreme Court, saying that that goes against his freedom of speech. That is a constitutional violation of your First Amendment to be, charged with burning the flag. That's part of his freedom of speech. So this is the majority ruling here. So it says the following excerpt from the court's opinion, a dissenting opinion expressed two arguments about the issue. If there is a bedrock principle underlying the First Amendment, it is that the government may not prohibit the expression of an idea simply because society finds the idea offensive or disagreeable. In short, nothing in our precedent suggests that a state may foster its own view of the flag by prohibiting expressive conduct relating to it. The First Amendment does not guarantee that other concepts virtually sacred to our nation as a whole, such as the principle that discrimination on the basis of race is odious and destructive, will go unquestioned in the marketplace of ideas. We decline, therefore, to create for the flag an exception to the joust of principles protected by the First Amendment. So the majority ruling, now this happened in 1984, this court case isn't until 1989. They rule that his First Amendment rights are more important than this conviction. So they're basically saying that his, under the First Amendment, he is protected and has the right to burn the flag and cannot be convicted of a crime for doing so. That is the majority opinion. So they sided with Mr. Johnson here. They ruled with him on that decision. And then the dissenting opinion, right? So I don't know what the ruling was, but there was at least one justice that said that no, this isn't right. So we'll see what his opinion was here. So it says uncritical extension of constitutional protection to the burning of the flag risks the frustration of the very purpose for which organized governments are instituted. The court decides that the American flag is just another symbol about which not only must opinions pro and con can be tolerated, but for which the most minimal public respect may not be enjoined. The government may conscript men into the armed forces where they must and perhaps die for the flag, but the government may not prohibit the public burning of the banner under which they fight. I would uphold the Texas statute as applied in this case. So he's basically stating that it's more than just a symbol. And he's making the argument that, you know, soldiers in our armed forces die for the flag. And by that, he is stating that he would uphold the statute. Of course, he lost. Or he was in the minority opinion. That's the dissenting opinion. So for 11, how about Tracy? Could you read question 11 for us?
Yes. Which of the following statements accurately describes the argument made by the majority of the Supreme Court? A. Johnson conviction should stand according to Texas law. B. The First Amendment protects destruction of nation symbols. C. The U.S. government cannot prevent free expression, even if the expression is offensive. D. Certain ideas or beliefs of the United States cannot be questioned or disputed. B.
So C.
C.
It's the government cannot prevent free expression. So it's not so much that it protects destruction. Well, see, that gets a little iffy because the national symbol might be like personal property or something, like a monument or something like that. So you can't go around doing something like that, but you cannot prevent free expression even if we find that offensive. And that's basically what their ruling was there. So 11 is C. Right, and 12, let's go to Etta for number 12.
Okay. Let me get that. On what basis does Justice Brennan build his argument? A, he uses statistics about U.S. flag burning incidents. B, he relates facts about the flag and its history. C, he consults public opinion. Or D, he relies on legal precedent. A
D.
or B. Okay, D.
D as in
He
dog.
relies on legal precedent.
He mentions there's no precedent. Yeah, so if there's a legal precedent, it means there's been a ruling by the court prior to this one that they can look at. That will help inform them when things are big landmark cases. Well, if we set a precedent for the court, they'll talk about that. But here, he says there's no former precedent that's set here to maintain this idea that we protect the flag from damage. There's nothing in our courts that have decided this prior. So D as in dog for 12 and 13. Grace, will read number 13 for us.
Oh, okay. Number 10. This Supreme Court ruling confirms that the Constitution protects which of the following acts? A, vandalism of a national landmark. B, threatening speech toward another citizen. C, stealing of property from a public building. And D, recording of a song that features curse words. A.
So D. So this is related to the question before. So it's talking about, or I'm sorry, from question 11 about it guarantees your right to freedom of speech, even if it's offensive, right? So it's related to the idea that you can record a song with curse words. It may be offensive, but you have the right and the freedom to do that. So D as in dog. What we're getting caught up with in today's world is what, a lot of people think that they should always have an outlet. Nobody has to give you an outlet for your free speech. The difference is the government cannot prevent you from saying something. So in this case, when Mr. Johnson here was arrested for burning the flag, the government intervened with his freedom of speech. But there's still, you can say stuff and there's consequences, right? That's different from not being able to say it. So D as in dog for 13. 14. How about Sasha Gay? We'll go to you for 14.
On which of the following does Chief Justice Rehnquist base his argument? A, the history of the American flag. B, the flag's symbolic value. C, the flag as a piece of public property. And D, the military significance of the flag. Is it B?
Yeah, so he's saying it's not just a flag, it's not just a cloth or a piece of fabric. It has this symbolic value that it stands for our country, and our soldiers die for the flag. They die for the symbolism. So B as in boy for 14, and then last one here, 15. Christiana, how about reading 15 for us?
Okay, the question says which of the following gives the opinions of Justice Brand I'm presenting the name Brennan
Justice
and
Brennan.
Okay, Brennan and Chief Justice
Rehnquist
more credibility on his subject than the opinions of either a Congress person or even the president. The Supreme Court justices are appointed for life, so they are immune to political concern. B, members of Congress and the president do not know the law. C, their knowledge of legal precedents gives their decision creditability and weight. D, the fact that one is liberal and one is conservative create balance in their decision. Is it A or D?
So it's C, right? Any justice on the Supreme Court we consider an expert in law. So they understand legal precedent. They understand, they are the foremost authorities on the Constitution in our country, at least theoretically, So, and I mean, President Obama was a constitutional scholar. He was a constitutional lawyer, but as far as doing this every day, they encounter this. This is what they do. So they are the expert, more so than a member of Congress or a president. So 15 is C as in cat. So quickly here, is there anybody that needs any follow-up here on any of the questions?
Can I get number 11?
11 was C as in cat.